Imagine this scenario. It's Monday morning. Your team gathers for stand-up. 3 developers dive into complex technical explanations that consume most of the meeting. 2 team members are clearly checking email on their phones. By the end, no one's clear about what's actually blocking progress, and you've run late and burned 45 minutes of valuable time. Sound familiar? In this module, we'll explore how to transform stand-ups from dreaded status meetings into valuable synchronization events that enhance team coordination and solve problems. As we've seen in our chapters on strategy and objectives, keeping teams aligned and focused on outcomes is critical, and well-run stand-ups are one of your most influential daily tools for doing precisely that. By the end of this module, you'll understand the true purpose of stand-ups, know how to structure them effectively, have techniques for keeping them focused, and be able to diagnose and address common dysfunctions that can make them ineffective. The key to a good stand-up is setting the right focus. Contrary to what many think, stand-ups aren't about status reporting to leaders. They're about team synchronization and removing obstacles. In the traditional Scrum model, stand-ups give people space to share 3 things: what they worked on yesterday, what they will work on today, and any blockers they face. This format serves several critical functions. First is team awareness, ensuring everyone understands what others are working on and how their work interconnects. Second, surfacing blockers, identifying and addressing impediments to progress quickly. Research shows that when blockers are identified early in daily stand-ups, teams can address issues before they impact deadlines and deliverables. Third, maintaining momentum, keeping the team focused on objectives and creating daily accountability without micromanagement. For remote teams, stand-ups take on additional importance. They provide a regular touch point that helps maintain connection and collaboration despite physical distance. Research on distributed teams shows that daily synchronous communication significantly reduces misunderstandings compared to asynchronous-only approaches. For most co-located teams, stand-ups should last about 15 minutes. For remote teams, I typically keep them to about 30 minutes. This extra time lets us chat at the beginning to build relationships, which connects to what we discussed in the last chapter about resolving conflicts. That time to talk about non-work things is really valuable for remote teams. When running stand-ups, I often screen share the board, showing what people are working on. We focus on what's in progress, what's in user acceptance testing, and any bugs flagged that need attention. The physical setup matters too. As the name suggests, traditional stand-ups happen standing up, which naturally keeps things brief. For remote meetings, having cameras on helps maintain engagement and allows you to read visual cues. There are several format options you might consider. The traditional 3-question format: what did I accomplish yesterday, what am I doing today, and what's blocking me? Walking the board, moving through tasks on your project board by status rather than by person. And an outcome-focused format: how are you moving us toward our sprint goal, and what's slowing that down? Each approach has its merits, but what's most important is consistency. Whatever format you choose, stick with it long enough for the team to adapt and find their rhythm. What you want to avoid is somebody dominating the conversation. This can happen with good intentions. Someone's struggling with a problem, and multiple team members start diving deep into it. When this happens, you need to redirect and say, "We need to take this offline. Let's schedule a separate meeting for it. Let's get through everybody else's updates and work through that issue afterward." Stand-up is meant to flag issues, not solve every problem that comes up. But if something can be solved quickly, do it. There's no sense in delaying it. As a rule of thumb, if you can solve an issue in 5 minutes or less, handle it in stand-up. If it's going to take longer, defer it to another time. The parking lot method is particularly effective. When detailed discussions arise, acknowledge their importance, but place them in the parking lot for follow-up immediately after stand-up or at a scheduled time later. Studies show that implementing this technique helps teams maintain focus while still addressing all critical issues. Another effective technique is time boxing individual updates. Some teams use a timer app that everyone can see, giving each person 60 to 90 seconds to share their update. This creates gentle pressure to be concise without rushing people uncomfortably. For remote or hybrid teams, stand-ups require special attention. Beyond the basics of good video conferencing setup, consider these specific strategies. Ensure equal participation between on-site and remote team members. In hybrid settings, it's easy for remote participants to become second-class citizens if you're not careful. Be mindful of time zones. For globally distributed teams, rotating meeting times can share the burden of odd-hour meetings. Some teams use asynchronous stand-ups, where team members record brief video updates that others can watch when their workday begins. Use collaborative tools effectively. Screen sharing your project board gives everyone a visual anchor for the conversation. Tools like Miro or digital Kanban boards allow everyone to interact with the same information regardless of location. And most importantly, create opportunities for the informal connections that happen naturally in office settings. This is why I recommend allowing a few minutes at the beginning of remote stand-ups for casual conversation. One of the main reasons stand-ups fail is that they become status report meetings rather than opportunities to connect engineers to support one another and resolve blockers. You want to ensure that team members speak on their own behalf and that everyone participates. When you notice tasks aren't moving, you should dig deeper. I've seen situations where someone says what they're working on day after day, but they're clearly not making progress. They might be blocked, but unwilling to say it. There are valid reasons why people might hesitate to admit they're stuck, especially if you haven't yet created the psychological safety where people feel it's okay to say they can't figure something out or are struggling. That's a situation you'll have to address directly. You should say, "I noticed you're still working on the same thing. What's going on here? Are you blocked? Is there something we can help with?" Your job as a leader is to deliver value. If work isn't getting done, then you need to step in and get things moving again. Another common dysfunction is the overly detailed update. When someone starts diving into technical specifics that don't benefit the whole team, gently redirect them. You might say, "Let's focus on outcomes and blockers in stand-up, and we can discuss implementation details right after." While a consistent stand-up structure is valuable, there are times when rigid adherence to format becomes less important than responding to your team's human needs. This is especially true when facing unexpected events that impact your team members. I've experienced this with multinational teams where real crises occurred. When working with globally distributed teams, we must recognize that the world is chaotic and conditions vary dramatically across different locations. It's easy to look outside our window, see calm weather, and forget that team members in other regions might be experiencing hurricanes, earthquakes, political instability, or war. These aren't abstractions, they're real conditions affecting real people on your team. I once had an employee whose town was hit by an earthquake. Another time, an employee's apartment building was bombed. These are extreme examples, but they illustrate an important point. We must be flexible and empathetic when our teams face serious challenges. It's still important to check in with the whole team about their work in these situations, but the format may need to change. I might say, "We're going to do stand-up by exception today. Don't give updates on what you're working on. Just tell us if you're blocked or need help. If not, we'll move on." This allows us to preserve the core function of identifying blockers while giving people space to process what's happened during the rest of the stand-up time. Using stand-up time to process and talk about these events isn't a distraction from work. It's an investment in your team's well-being and long-term productivity. Remember that we're dealing with humans, not just resources, and showing empathy during difficult times builds the trust that makes teams effective. It's also just the right thing to do. Now that we've covered how to run stand-ups and adapt them to different circumstances, how do you know if they're actually working? Success isn't measured by adherence to a specific format, but by the outcomes your stand-ups produce for the team. Look beyond formal adherence to practical results. Are blockers being identified earlier? Is resolution time for issues decreasing? Are team members collaborating more effectively? One of the most telling indicators is whether team members are helping each other outside of formal channels. One of my ultimate goals for stand-ups is to foster a team culture where people don't wait for stand-ups to ask for help or offer assistance. I aim to get a team to the point where they almost don't need stand-up anymore. You should still do stand-up at least every other day because there will always be people who benefit from it. You'll still benefit from it as a leader. You need that time to build relationships and hear people's voices. But ideally, the team reaches a level of maturity where they aren't waiting for stand-up to resolve issues. They're asking for help sooner, they're getting help sooner. They're anticipating when someone else needs help. When this happens, you've created a truly effective team culture, and stand-up becomes just one element in a broader collaborative environment. Let's review what we've covered. We've seen how stand-ups serve as critical synchronization points for teams, helping surface blockers, maintain alignment, and build relationships. We've explored techniques for keeping stand-ups focused and productive, specific considerations for remote teams, and strategies for addressing common dysfunctions. Remember, the main thing with stand-up is that you've got to be doing it, and you've got to be focused on delivering the outcomes you need. The primary outcome is identifying blockers and getting them resolved. Knowing what people are progressing is good, but it's secondary and less important. Your stand-ups should evolve as your team matures. What works for a newly formed team may not be optimal for high-performing teams that have been working together for years. Be willing to experiment with formats and approaches, but give each experiment enough time to evaluate its effectiveness properly. As you return to your stand-ups, consider, are they effectively surfacing blockers? Is every team member engaged and contributing? Are the right issues being discussed in stand-up versus taken offline? By continually refining your approach based on these considerations, you'll transform stand-ups from perfunctory status updates into valuable synchronization events that help your team deliver better work. Our next module will explore how to run effective retrospectives that drive continuous improvement. But before we move on, take a moment to evaluate your current stand-up process and identify one change you can make to increase its effectiveness.